So before I start, any questions, anyone? Okay, so let's get started. So we'll talk about classification models. This is the agenda. And we'll mostly cover two popular models. One is decision tree, and you may classify this under machine learning method. And logistic regression is obviously statistical method. And we'll also talk about few basic or essential things regarding predictive modeling. So I like to start with some examples of classification that you may come across. First one is classifying customers as churn or not churn. So churn basically means customer leaving the company. So for example, if you have a AT&T network and if you sign a contract for 2 years as a customer, so after 2 years, you are free to go to anybody else. And if you choose to go to anybody else like Sprint or T-Mobile or Verizon, so that's what is called churning. So customer leaving a company and going to mostly a competitor. Many companies find this as a very important problem to solve because nobody wants their customers to leave. And the idea is that you collect past data and analyze it, develop some kind of models that can look at several variables like age, how long that customer has been with the company, what kind of services they use, what income they have, what is their family income, and many other parameters, whether they own a house or not. So once you use several variables and develop a model that is able to classify existing customer who is either likely to churn or not churn. And the idea is very simple. If you can develop such a model, then you can make a list of maybe top 500 customers that have a high probability of churning. So those are the customers that are likely to leave in a given big city or big area. And then instead of trying to convince every customer, even those customers who are not likely to churn, investing your energy. So as a company, they can decide to focus their energies only on those ones that have very high probability of churning by making some offers or whatever strategy they have. So obviously churning is a big problem for every business. And it's also a very big problem for UMass Dartmouth. And not only UMass Dartmouth, any university in US faces this problem. And the problem is that a student enrolls in undergrad program, which is typically 4 years. And after 1 year, they go somewhere else. The term that we use in universities, we call it retention. Every college, every university assesses their retention levels and they try to devise methods to solve that problem. Now, why it is a problem? It is a problem because the numbers are very big. If 100 students join in the first year, on an average in US, the number of students who churn, students who leave, so that's more than 30%. So 30% of the students do not continue for second, third, and fourth year. So the university or college is able to retain them only for less than or equal to 1 year. And studying those patterns and identifying students who are likely to churn, that can be very beneficial for any university. And typically, even if a university is able to improve retention percentage by just few percentages, 2-3%, that's a huge thing, because when you convert that into numbers in terms of dollars over 4 years, so it comes to a very big number. So this is certainly a big problem, and any company you work for right now or work in future, so you'll find that almost everybody struggles with this. Everybody tries to do something about it. And that's why there are so many machine learning models that focus on classification problems. Another example could be predicting approval, disapproval of a loan based on information such as credit scores. So a lot of people apply for loan, and whether the loan gets approved or not approved, so it can depend on so many different variables. In US, common way of looking at it is
FICO credit score.
Yeah, FICO credit score. So that's the number people look at. It summarizes many things related to you financially. And instead of they digging into so many other things, they just look at this score and make a decision. Similarly, there are many programs that help to classify email, if it is a spam or not. Even our StartMath email has this feature where some emails are automatically classified as junk or spam, and they are put in a different folder. But obviously these programs are not 100% accurate, because sometimes you find that some useful email goes into that. And let's say you apply for some job and they send you some dates for interview, and by mistakes it goes into a junk folder and you never look at it. So obviously it's a big problem. So that's why they have to develop a classification model that's accurate, and it does this job nicely, basically with high accuracy. In healthcare, patients may be classified as normal, suspect, or pathologic based on certain readings, parameters, or measurements. Loan applicants may be classified as low, medium, or high risk. So these are just few examples, and we'll also go through many other examples where we will actually use our data and develop these kind of classification models that help us to achieve good level of classification. One of the popular tools is decision trees, which is also called CART. And the full expansion of CART is classification and regression trees. So one thing you can remember is, especially in machine learning, they use these terms slightly different from what you might have heard in a statistics class. Classification and regression. So classification, typically they mean that kind of situation where your response or outcome variable is categorical. So yes, no, spam, no spam. So the examples that we saw on the previous slide. So those kind of problems are classification. And regression is where response variable is a number or numeric. So for example, predicting house prices. The reason decision tree is called CART, classification and regression trees, because it can solve both problems. It can be used for solving both type of problems, classification as well as regression. So it can work with a situation where your response or outcome, so if it is categorical, or as we call in R, if it is a factor type of variable. And sometimes people just call it trees. So decision tree can do both. And rules are represented by these tree diagrams. So one very solid positive thing about the decision tree is that you can visualize it. You can see your model, unlike many methods where it's like black box. So the goal is to classify or predict an outcome based on a set of predictors or what are called independent variables. So using them, you try to make a prediction or classification. So one example is your goal could be to classify a record as the customer will accept credit card offer or will not accept. So many credit card companies waste a lot of money sending material to potential customers. And most of the time people just throw it in a waste basket. They don't even sometimes open these offers. So a lot of waste, but if somebody can develop a good model, and those companies, they do this kind of marketing in more focused way by targeting only those who have the high probability of accepting, they can save millions of dollars every year. So if this is the goal, then your decision tree rule may look like this. So it is assuming there are some variables like income level. Obviously, that could play an important role, whether you accept or reject that offer. Your education level, number of people in your family, and finally, the response. If income is more than $92.5 thousand, so this is obviously annual income, and education is less than 1.5, where these numbers indicate something. It could be like 1, 2, 3, 4. So somebody is undergrad, it may be 1. Somebody is a postgrad or graduate 2. Somebody may have a PhD, it may be 3, something like that. And then average number of family members. So if this is the situation, then the rule says this customer or potential customer is likely to be of class 0, which is non-acceptor. So he or she is unlikely. The chances or the probability is very low that this person will accept. Another example where we talk about student applications. So for example, students apply for graduate programs in various universities and colleges. And these applications have a lot of information. Based on certain criteria, the goal could be, like when we develop this machine learning model, the goal could be to classify student applications as admit or reject. What is the target or dependent variable? So in this data, dependent variable is admit, where 0 means no, student was not admitted or accepted, and 1 means was accepted. There are 3 predictor variables: GRE, GPA. So if it is a application for graduate program, so obviously you have to submit your undergrad GPA. And the third one is ranking of your school. So wherever you do your undergrad, what was the ranking of your school or college? So based on that, the idea is to develop a classification model that helps to predict whether a student will be accepted or not. So this is a simple decision tree that was made with that data. So this is the final outcome. So that's the starting point, and this is the final outcome. And obviously in between, many things happen. You feed the data, you run your R code, and you get this final outcome. So we'll go into what exactly happens very broadly, but let's look at this end product or decision tree. So a decision tree has, you can see some circles and some rectangles. So these circles that you see, GPA and rank. So on the previous slide, I mentioned that they are the independent variable or they are the predictors. You may notice that out of 3 variables that we saw, GRE is missing. And the only reason GRE is not there is because GRE was not significant enough. It was not statistically significant. So if you look at the top variable, the first node, the first circle, it indicates that the variable is GPA and p-value is less than 0.001, which means this variable was highly statistically significant. So your confidence level was more than 99.9. Rank was also statistically significant with p equals 0.01, which means 99% confidence level. So in the decision tree, the variable that is at the top, in this case GPA, that is supposed to be the most important variable. So that has the biggest contribution towards your classification model. So with this data, we can say that that's the case. Whatever analysis we do, obviously we are talking in terms of that situation, that university, that college, whatever data they collect. It may be something which may not be applicable universally everywhere, because we may not have collected data from every college. And then rank is the second most important. Now, how do we use this? We look at GPA, and if GPA is less than or equal to 3.41 at this college, and for those applicants, we reach node 2, which is a rectangle. So this node is called a terminal node. That's the end point. So that rule stops there. That's the final thing where a decision is made. So what is the decision now? You'll see that in node 2, you have n equals 169. So n is the sample size. So whatever decision you are making in this data set, there were 169 data points in this situation. So that basically gives you more confidence that this decision is based on a large sample. If the sample size was only 2, so we reach this terminal node and see that the sample size is only 2, obviously that will not give us a lot of confidence, and we don't know whether the decision that we are going to take will be right or wrong. Now, what does this rectangle indicate? The rectangle or the bar plot shows probability. What is the probability that the student application will be accepted or student will be admitted to the graduate program? And you can see that that probability is less than 20%. There is 80% chance that student will not be accepted. So what it means is GPA, if it is less than 3.41, then nothing else matters. Rank of the school doesn't matter. GRE obviously doesn't matter. And the student is likely to be rejected, and the chances of student getting rejected is about 80%. But if GPA is more than 3.41, then we also need to take into account rank of their previous school. So if this applicant comes from rank 1 school, you'll see that the probability is now more than 70%. So GPA more than 3.41 and rank is 1. So top school means the chances are very high that that student will be accepted. And even if a GPA is more than 3.41, but if the applicant is from 2, 3, or 4 ranked colleges or places, so their chances will decrease. So this is still better than the first rectangle, like this is almost 40% chance that a student may still get accepted. But compared to the second bar plot at node 5, the chances decrease. This is another representation of the same decision tree. Earlier in the bar plot, we were guessing that the probability is about 80% or 70% or 20%. But in this picture, you have the exact values. So there's no guessing now. You know that the probability of getting rejected here is 80.5%. Node number 4, probability of getting accepted is about 74.1%. So same information presented slightly differently. So with the decision trees, there are 2 key ideas. One is that what we do is we do recursive partitioning. So whatever data set we have, we repeatedly split the records into 2 so as to achieve maximum homogeneity within the new parts. So we try to break the data and try to reach a situation where we can make a decision clearly. So homogeneity means in that group you have more admit student versus not admit, or vice versa. It's not like almost same. So homogeneity will be 100% if everybody is of same type. you may have played a game maybe sometime in your childhood where there are two teams and one team gives a name to the coordinator, some popular name, and other team has to ask 10 questions to figure out who that person is. But then they have to ask those questions in such a way that each question can only be answered as yes or no, nothing else. So usually people try to ask questions in such a way that it divides the whole thing into two parts. So for example, they may say whether this person is a male, and if the answer is no by the other team, so now they will not even think of the other group. They know that this person is a female. Then they may ask a question whether this person is dead or alive, because it may be somebody from 100 years back. So that way you continue to partition your data, split your data into two recursively till you reach a situation where you are able to answer very clearly. But if you have a lot of data, especially if we talk about big data, XC was talking about like data in petabytes. So when you have a lot of data and a lot of variables, your tree may not look like something that I showed you. This tree is very tiny. So that tree may become too big. And even with small data set, you can put some settings and parameters where you allow that tree to grow, even if a sample size is just 1, although it is of no use. But if you allow it to grow, it can become a very big tree. So second key idea with decision trees is that we have to do some pruning. We have to cut some branches, some leaves, and keep it compact, keep it simple. Because if you start having branches which have only sample size of 1 or 2, so that's what is called in machine learning overfitting. You start to overfit. You are giving too much importance to each and every data point. So how does this recursive partitioning happen? So this is the algorithm. So how it works is very simple, although you don't have to do this because in R, you can just run one line of code and you're done. What the algorithm does is it picks one of the predictor variables xi. So ultimately it has to decide which variable is the most important, but it has to start somewhere and then pick a value of xi, say si. If you think about GPA, then it may pick a value that divides the training data into 2. It may not be equal. It may be like 50-50, 50% of the data below, 50% of the above, something like that. So maybe GPA of 3, something like that. So SI could be that number. And then measure how pure or homogeneous each of the resulting portions are. So now you have divided them into 2, and it is going to be very unlikely that each group is pure, where you have only one type of response. So it may not happen that as soon as you divide GPA into 2 groups, like less than 3 GPA and more than 3 GPA, it's not that everybody who had more than 3 GPA was admitted to the college. If that was the case, then we say it's pure, 100%, but it need not be 100%, and usually it will not be. But it will do that calculation. What percentage of records are pure? Is purity or homogeneity at 20%, 50%, 80%? And then algorithm tries different values of xi and si. So now it's going to play with variables and their values, and their whole aim is to reach a state where they are able to maximize purity. So if 3 did not work, let's say with 3, you had a purity level of about 20%. But when it moved to 3.2, purity level increased to 35%. So that way it will keep on searching till it reaches the best values. And then after you get a maximum purity split, repeat the process for a second split. So now you try something else, and keep on going. So that's why it is called recursive partitioning, because every stage it keeps on splitting the data.
Professor,
yeah, go ahead.
what is the difference between pure and homogeneous?
Oh, they are synonyms, like they are same thing. They are two different names. So pure or homogeneous. So both are same.
Okay.
Opposite of this will be impure and heterogeneous, where you have like different things in the same group. So what is the tree structure? We already looked at a tree. When split points become nodes on the tree, so you looked at the circles. So those are the nodes. And rectangles, because we are using a term tree for these decision trees, you have rectangles representing leaves, or terminal points, the last points, end point, no further splits, where classification values are noted. For the rule, you have to read down. You go from top to bottom. So here is one example. So maybe some of you may be wondering, it doesn't look like a tree. If you look at this decision tree, it doesn't look like a tree. So please note that this is an inverted tree. So roots, which are the most important part, they are at the bottom. So GPA, if you invert it, GPA will be at the bottom. That's the most important variable. And we are calling these rectangles leaves. So that means they are at the top. So if you think of like a human being as a tree, you can imagine a human being being upside down. So head is the most important, that's at the bottom. And then you have other things as leaves or branches. So because there are mainly three paths here, we have three rules. Rule 1 is you start at the top. If GPA is less than or equal to 3.1, then reject the applicant. Rule number 2, if GPA is more than 3.41 and the applicant comes from rank 1 school, admit. Rule number 3, GPA more than 3.41, rank 2, 3 or 4, then you reject. Why reject? Because the probability is less than 0.5. So this tree tells us or gives us that information. But as a decision maker, you may also decide, because the final decision is still in the control of that person who is the final decision maker. So you may decide as a decision maker that this is very close to like almost 50-50. With rule 1 and 2, you can save a lot of time and let machine decide on those applicants. But when it comes to rule number 3, you maybe make a person in charge and let that person go through those pile of applicants and then make a decision. So that way their work gets reduced, because node 1 and 2 will take care of things in an automated way. And then for node 5, you bring somebody in and that person looks at things more carefully and then decide. Determining leaf node label. How do we figure out in the previous chart that this rectangle is reject or accept? Each leaf node label is determined by voting of records within it and also by cutoff value. So voting of record basically means there is a sample size, like first rectangle had 169 samples and not everybody was accepted, neither everybody was rejected. So why we decide reject? We decide reject because of voting, because most of the students, almost 80%, were rejected. And what is the cutoff value? Probably we are treating 50%. Anytime probability is more than 50% that a candidate should be rejected, then we reject. Records within each node are from training data. So whatever we do while developing a model, we are doing it with training data set. We do not use complete data. We break that data into two parts. One part that we use for building the model is called training data. And the remaining part that we do not show our model, so that's called test data. So we use test data to assess model performance. And cutoff value here is 50%, which means that the leaf nodes label is the majority class. If a class has more than 50%, so 51% for example, we may treat that as a one group, accept or reject. But if we move this cutoff, like in that case, we may not want to be at 50%. So if we move cutoff over 75%, now why would somebody move cutoff to more than 75%? It may depend on the college and applicants. There may be some colleges where they get a lot of applicants. They are very sure that they will be able to get whatever number of seats they have. So they can become a bit strict and accept only those students who have like 75% or higher probability. But if there is a college where they don't get many applicants and all seats don't get filled, but they still need to get students, so they may even go below 50%. Overfitting is always a problem in machine learning. So overfitting in decision tree is also a problem. And one way to solve that problem is to stop the tree growth. You don't want your tree to grow to the sky, but you have to create some limits. Otherwise, it is going to continue to grow. Because the natural end of process is 100% purity. So the way this algorithm is made, if you don't stop it, it will continue till it gets 100% purity for each leaf, which may mean if you have like 100,000 data points, it may mean 100,000 different leaves. So this obviously overfits the data, which end up fitting noise. So instead of signal, overfitting creates a situation where you start fitting noise. So even small deviations in the training data you want to capture. But when you try that model on test data, you fail miserably because there was overfitting. It was trying to follow each and every data point very minutely. Overfitting leads to low predictive accuracy of new data. With new data, your performance of the model may not be as good. So I have seen some models which give 80% accuracy with training data, but with test data, it drops to about 20%. Whenever you see that kind of situation, that means there is a problem. And that problem is overfitting. Past a certain point, the error rate for the validation or test data starts to increase. So this picture actually captures everything nicely. So if your y-axis is some kind of error related to the tree, so this is like classification error. So what is the error? So a student was admitted. So in reality, a student was admitted or applicant was accepted, but your model predicts that the student should be rejected. So that's an error. Accepted students may be indicated as rejected by the model, or rejected student may be indicated as or classified as other class. So when you are developing a model, your training data is blue line. You keep on splitting, keep on splitting, error will continue to go down, down, down. In the extreme case, it becomes 0 because every node you have a single data point and it's 100% pure, no error. But at some point, your unseen data or test data, it follows your training data and then starts to deviate. That's the point where overfitting starts. Any questions?
Please, Professor, explain this again.
So this picture?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you are making a machine learning model, what are you expecting from it? You are expecting that it will classify your data correctly. So you are hoping that your model will do a good job. and the data is admit data, whether student was accepted or not. When you're building the model using training data, we always build our model based on training data. So this blue line is for training and green line is for test data. Unseen data is test data or validation data. But the model is built on training data. So when you are making trees, initially, let's say you have 1,000 data points and you cut into half, and obviously error rates may be high initially. So when you start, error rates will be high. And then you further cut into half, error rate will reduce slightly. So you continue to split your data. Just like the example I gave you, you continue to split the whole world into two, male, female, alive or dead. And you are going to reach a situation where the group is likely to have more and more homogeneity. So initially, when you divide the world into two parts like male, female, so compared to the initial situation where everybody was there, male and female, and now you have only female, that means there is some level of homogeneity which is better than the previous state. And then when you divide that female into alive and dead, then again, in the new group, you have more homogeneity than the previous one. So your error keeps on coming down. Your purity keeps on improving as you continue to split your data further and further and further. So then you say, okay, whether a sports person or not. So if it is a sports person, then again, that group is obviously more similar than where you include movie stars and other people, politicians. So it becomes pure and pure, but then your unseen data in the test data, you may see that it starts to increase. So actually you will see this in action when we work with actual data and calculate our error rates. So it will make it more clear, and we will keep on returning to this actually to make it more clear. Any other question? So what we'll do is now we will follow this code and create a decision tree. So I will suggest download the data, that CSV file, and I'm going to go to RStudio now. So we'll start by reading the data. So let's keep it simple. We'll call our data, my data. And we'll use the command that we have been using earlier also, read.csv file.choose. And since I know there's a header, we'll say header equals capital T, true. And then when I run this, we can read the file that you downloaded. And immediately in the third window, you see my data appears. So if you click on that, it has 400 observations and 4 variables. So this is the same data that I explained in the PowerPoint. You can see all the columns.
Professor, I have a question. On my
Yeah.
RStudio, the run button disappeared. Do you know how I get that back?
What disappeared?
The run button in RStudio.
Run button. You may not have opened the window that where you can type the code. What you can do is, you see this plus sign at the corner? You see the plus sign
Oh, yeah.
left upper corner?
All right, I got
So-
it. I figured it out. Thank you.
Yeah, so you should click on R script. So that's where you'll see the run button. Yeah. Okay, let's look at structure of this data. So you can see 400 observations for variables. when you read this file as a CSV file, R automatically figures out what type of variable it is, and it makes some judgment and labels each variable as either integer or number, whatever. But it may not be the way you want it to be, because we know that admit, whether the student was admitted or not, it's not a integer variable, it's a factor variable. So although we are using 0 and 1 to represent accepted and not accepted, but it's not an integer variable. Similarly, rank, it says, is integer 1, 2, 3, 4, but that also in reality is not a integer variable, it's a factor variable. When we know that a variable is a factor variable, or it is not what we see when we do structure, we should make those changes. So let's change admit to a factor variable. So my data, that's our data, $admit. And we want to treat this as dot factor, and then my data admit. So when you run this line, it will convert admit from integer variable to a factor variable, which is the correct format. So let's run this. How do you know it made those changes? You can run line number 3 again and see now admit is a factor variable. We'll repeat this for rank. So I will copy this and admit becomes rank, and run this. Look at structure and you will see admit and rank are both factor variables now. And then I'm going to split data. I'm going to use IND for independent samples. So what we'll do is we'll take independent samples. So we want to randomly split the data into 2 parts, and we take a random sample using sample function. We want to take a sample of size 2 and number of rows. So we can supply whatever number of rows my data has. So whatever number of rows we have in my data. And then replace equals. So it means, should we do sampling with replacement or not? We will say true. We'll do sampling with replacement. I will explain to you why. What about probability? Usually people split data like 80-20, 80% training, 20% for the testing, or 60-40, or 75%, 25, sometimes even 50-50. So different people use different ways. Let's do 80-20. So first data set will have 80%. Second will have 20%. If you run this, and if you go to console, because when you run something and you're not sure what exactly I have done, we can always go to console and see what is inside. So if you type IND, because we stored this output in IND, so let's look at what is inside IND. So IND has these numbers, 1s and 2s, and there are 400 1s and 2s, because we indicated that we want number of rows to be same as my data, which is 400. So these numbers mean basically this is to help location. So this is the first value. This 30 means this is the 30th value. 59 means this is the 59th. This is 60, 61, 62, and so on. And the last data point is 400th. So basically it has given us 1s and 2s, where 1s are about 80% and 2s are about 20%. And the reason we used replace equals true, so when we are picking up ones and twos, so we want to do it with replacement. If you take one and don't return it, then it doesn't have any one left. It can only pick two. So it will not give a equal chance to ones and twos. So this is a sampling with replacement. I have 1, 1, 1, 2, and some sequence. Everyone has the same sequence, right?
Professor, how did you get those numbers?
No,
Like, I ran it and I'm not getting any of that.
So you ran line number 8, right?
Yes.
Did you? So after running line number 8, so what happened in line number 8 is we did something, we took a sample and we stored that in IND. So what I did was I went in console and simply typed IND and I hit enter to get this output.
Oh.
Because I just want to see what's there inside IND.
Professor, I got 2, 1, 1.
So you have a different sequence, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think everybody may have a different sequence because this is random number. We are generating ones and twos randomly. The only thing it is doing is it is trying to make ones about 80% and twos about 20%. Other than that, it doesn't ensure anything. I have a different sequence, you may have a different sequence. But the question is, if I use this and do all the analysis, my result will be very different from yours. And everybody will have a totally different outcome. In R, we can fix that randomization by adding a line. So I'm inserting a line after split data. We call it set.seed. Remember, we use this for network diagram to fix the positions and not let them change randomly. As long as you use the same number as me, which could be anything. So I'm going to use 2, 2, 2. Or let me stick to 1, 2, 3, 4 so that I get the same plot. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So use the same number and then run this and check your IND in the console. So now your pattern and my pattern may be same. So 4 ones and then 2 and something like that.
Yeah, now it is same.
Yeah. So set.seed helps to freeze randomization and give us same sequence. Basically what happens is like it uses random numbers. For example, if you have a random number table, you close your eyes and put your finger somewhere and then start from there. You'll get one sequence of random numbers. But somebody else also closes their eyes and their fingers go somewhere else and their sequence may be totally different. But now all of us are going to the same starting point and that's why it is generating same random number. So once we have the same thing, let's create a train data and we'll use my data where our 400 observations are and then use square bracket and then we'll say IND equal 1, comma. So what this line is telling us or telling R is that, so pick up those rows where IND equals 1 and store that outcome in training data. I do not have anything after comma, which means I want all the columns, all 4 columns. So it will pick up first applicant, second applicant, third applicant, fourth applicant, and put them in training data. Fifth applicant will go to test data, and sixth one, seventh, and so on will go to train data. And that's how we'll create this split. Run this. And if you go to console and just type train, hit enter and go at the top.
Professor, I hate to pause the class with all these people, but I'm having some issues with my R. I haven't been able to do anything since I tried to figure it out, but it's not working. I'm trying to run things and nothing's showing up. Maybe I can show it to you real quick. Sorry, everybody.
So can you share your screen?
Yeah. Do you see now?
Okay, it's coming. Yeah. So are you getting any error or something?
So when I'm pressing this, even with just the SDR, nothing's
Oh.
happening on the bottom
Can you,
here.
can you exit and restart?
Oh, the whole program.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did it twice already.
Something is running the top side. Can you kill it in the background?
What is it?
Top side is showing on the console, right?
Yeah, there's
In
a
the
stop
console.
sign.
Yeah, kill that.
Oh.
Something is running in the background.
Click on that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was confused because the whole class, I'm not able to run anything. Okay, so I'll just quit it and maybe try to bring it up again and the stop sign should go away.
Yeah, so whenever you run something and if there is a stop sign, do not continue. Wait for the stop sign to go away. Otherwise,
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. Maybe I'll try that and let you know if that works.
okay. Okay, in the train data, if you see first, second, third, and fourth applicant are in the training data. Fifth is missing because that one will go to test data. And then you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 is missing. That means 14 will go to test data. So we'll create test by saying test, and we'll repeat the same thing with IND equals 2. So everything else is going to be same. So that will create. You can also look at your third window where it says training data has 325 observations and test data has 75. So if I do a quick math in console, 325 divided by 400, that's about 81.25%. So although we asked for 80% and 20% split, but it will never be exactly equal, but it will be around that number. Everyone with me so far except probably one? Anybody has any questions?
Could you tell me again, under the train on line 10, the indicator equals 1 or IND equals 1?
Equal 1, yeah.
Okay, why is that 1 again? What is the reason behind that again?
So in the previous line, we generated 400 ones and twos. This IND contains ones and twos. And 80%, about 80% of the values in IND are 1 and about 20% are 2s. In line number 10, we are just telling to choose those rows in our original data, like my data, when IND says 1. So that will help us in getting a sample of size about 80%. And similarly, when we say choose only those values when the rows are 2, so that will help us in getting a sample which is close to 20% and get it in test data. These two lines are helping us to split 400 applicants into about 2, 80% and 20%. And that's what you see in the third window when it says train has 325 observations and remaining 75 go to test. But it happens randomly. It's not that first 325 applicants will go to training and remaining 75% go to test. We don't want that. We want it to happen randomly.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Any other question? So did everyone complete this step?
Yes.
Good. So now we go to the next one where we create our tree. Before we create our tree model, we'll need a library called party. So very simple name to remember. It's called party. If I run this it tells me I don't have this package. So I must go to fourth window, click on packages, and then click install. And then it very quickly it installs. So now run the library and ignore all the information or warnings it gives you. That's okay. So everyone ready with the party package?
Yes.
To make a tree model, let's call our tree simply tree. So we'll save our model in tree. Also, like, why this package is called party? Because decision tree is basically partitions data continuously. It's coming from there. And the function that we use is called classification tree, C tree. The name of our variable is admit. Admit as a function of, so this tilde sign below escape button. And if you put a dot, which means admit as a function of all other variables. So you don't have to type each and every variable name. Let's say you have a data where there are 100 variables. So it will be very tedious to just keep on typing all 100 variables. So just put a small dot and everybody's covered. And then put a comma. And then we have to say what data set we are using. So we'll use train. The name of the data is train, this train that we created in line 10, and run. So it hardly takes any time. This is a small data and the algorithm works very quickly. If you type tree and run, it will give you this output. It says that this tree has 3 terminal nodes. We had seen that earlier in our charts. It says the response is admit, input variables are 3, and we have 325 observations. So that's the same as what we have in train data. And then if GPA is less than 3.41 and weight is your sample size, and criteria is similar to your confidence level. So 1 means almost 100% confidence. And this is test statistic that can be converted into a p-value and which converts to certain confidence level. But usually we are more interested in a visual plot. So we'll do plot tree and it will plot a tree. So this is how you got that tree that we saw earlier. If after tree, if you say what type, and if you say simple, you get that second plot that I showed you, second format. So this is how you got those trees.
I'm getting an error message.
You're getting an error line number 15.
Yes,
Does the error say no such package?
it says error in .call.graphics, C palette 2, invalid graphic state.
Is it for the plot? You got an error
Oh, yes,
after?
yes. Yeah, I got it after trying to run the plot.
Okay, so if you got error here, so that's line number 17. What happens is this plot requires some dimensions. And I know like you are using 2 screens at the same time. So you may have given very limited room for the plot to appear.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I have a split screen right now.
Yeah, so if you give, that's why I expanded this 4th screen to make it slightly bigger. So that's a small thing. If you give a little bit more room, it will show up, because this is not a huge tree, so you should be able to get it.
Hey, Professor, I finally started working and I got all the codes except the one before split data. Can you just go up on the code section real quick and I'll just take a picture?
Okay.
Right there. Thank you. And I'll take a quick picture and just mark it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All set. Thank you.
No problem. Anybody else who did not get a plot?
Professor, I got a plot, but my factors were rank and GRE, not GPA and rank. I'm assuming that's because my training data was different than your training data?
Yeah, if you're not using the same seed, so your data may be slightly different.
Okay.
If you use the set.seed, then whatever you see on my screen will replicate on your screen also.
I'm still getting the same error.
You have like enough room. Can you share your screen? Can you run line number 17? So that one works fine. Now plot error in something. This is not cloud, right?
No.
Can you close some of the files at the top, like especially in the first window, you have many files open. If you go to the third one, yeah, I don't know what is that, but if you, because you may not have closed it.
Last assignment.
Yeah, so that may be a huge data set, and those windows may be taking up a lot of energy and space. Because by closing them, you don't lose that data. That data is already there. You already have that data in the third window. That's just a view. So I don't know whether it's because of that. Now try.
So try this again. I'm not.
Yeah, that's already working.
Fine.
So, yeah. I know you have a lot of data files open too. Do you have a lot of plots also open? Click on the back button, like under plots. If you go back, there may be some plots sitting there. Probably the best thing is just,
Can I take the sweep?
Yeah, just sweep everything and try now.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so probably you had too many plots open.
Okay.
Because that also takes a lot of storage and a lot of your capacity.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so I guess everybody now has this plot. Now we'll calculate the error. So we want to know how our model performed. Let's do it for first train data. And then we'll do it for test data. So how can you make a prediction using our model tree? Let's use predict, and we'll use tree model and use train data and run. So it has made all these predictions. It says that the first student should not be admitted, second student should not be admitted, third student should be admitted, fourth should not be, and so on. So what we'll do is we'll store these predictions in P. We have 325 cases, applicants, and we have a prediction for each one. So let's store it in P. Although you can go individually and see what is happening, like first two were not accepted, third one was accepted. But if you look at train data, let's say I'm typing actually in console. I don't want to have too much stuff in the first window. So we'd say head train. First student was not admitted. You can see 0. But second was admitted. Third was admitted, and so on. So clearly there is a mismatch. All predictions are not correct.
Professor,
So, yeah.
Can you explain the numbers underneath the n number again? Because if y equals yes, does that mean that if you have a GPA of less than 3.41, you have an 80% chance of saying yes? That doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, the number here,
Yeah.
0.8. So that's your Y or response. 0.805 means 80%, 80.5% chance that the applicants will be rejected. They will not be admitted. Because first value is 0 and second value is for 1 admitted. So if GPA is less than 3.41, you have a probability of 80% that student will not be admitted.
All right, so it goes in order of the variables. So that first one goes to 0, the second one goes to 1. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank
So first number is for 0 and second is for 1. We have this training data on the left. If you look at the first applicant who was not admitted, so GPA was 3.61. So if you follow this tree, 3.61 is more than 3.41, right? So we'll go on the right side. And then we have to consider rank of the college too, rank of the school from where they're coming. Because 3.6 in rank 1 school may mean one thing, but rank 3 school, it may mean something else. So that's why we look at rank now. And for this student, rank of the college or school was 3. So that means now we are in this branch. And this branch says that there is a 62% chance that this student should be rejected. And the reality was that this student was rejected, 0. If you look at third candidate who was admitted, came from rank 1 school. But if you look at GPA, GPA is 4. So for third candidate, GPA wise, we go to the right side and then look at rank. And because rank is 1, we accept this student as per the model. For each student, we can apply this tree and see when this tree is right and when this tree is incorrect. Because this is based on algorithm and there's no guarantee that it will give us 100% accurate outcome. In fact, no model is going to give us 100% accurate outcome. That's not possible.
Professor, I have another question.
Yeah.
So when you do this predict, right, when it gets down to one of those square boxes, a termination node,
Yeah.
Does it select yes or no just because it gets to a certain box, like is 2 automatically no, or does when it gets to that box, it does that probability calculation?
It has done that probability calculation. If you reach this box, for example, so it is 80% do not admit, right? So the probability is 80% do not admit. So that box basically represents do not admit or reject. This box, 74% chance of getting admitted. So this box automatically says admit. So if we consider cutoff to be 50% probability, so clearly this one is do not admit, this one is admit.
So the prediction handles every single one is no. It doesn't do the calculation anymore. The calculation is part of the tree.
Yeah, for each candidate, it looks at the tree and then figures out where it will fit. You can run each case by this tree. So start at the top, look at GPA. How much is GPA for this applicant? So for example, 7th one, GPA is 2.98. So which is less than 3.41, right?
Yep.
If it is less than 3.41, your automatic decision based on the model is reject.
Yep. All right.
So the model says reject. Now it's a different matter that this candidate actually was accepted. In this particular case, 7th case, this tree model was not right in predicting because this student has a GPA of 2.98, although he comes from rank 1, but as per the model, this candidate should have been rejected. This data for classification is never very clean. There's a lot of overlap between admitted versus not admitted. And there are some other considerations on some occasions. So that's why it's not possible to get 100% accurate outcome. But let's calculate the error rate for trained data. And we have stored these predictions in P, whether it is 0 or 1, whether it should be, applicant should be admitted or not admitted. So what you can do is you can create a small table with P, where you have like zeros and ones. P is predicted value. P and our data is train. So now I'm just putting the actual values in the table and run. So this is a small table, and this table is called confusion matrix. Basically, it tells you how confused the tree model is. Everyone is getting this table so that I can explain it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me make it easier to understand. So P is actually predicted value. So I would say predicted equals P. And second one is actual. So actual equals this, so that you see a name and know which one is actual, which one is predicted. So predicted, so spelling correction. So this side you have predicted, at the top you have actual. So 216 means there were 216 applicants that were actually not admitted, and model also predicts them as not admitted. So this is a correct prediction of students who were rejected. If you go on the diagonal to the next item on the diagonal, number 20. So there were 20 applicants who were accepted actually, and the model also says these 20 should be accepted. So on the diagonal you get correct predictions, and the numbers on off diagonal 82 and 7 are errors or misclassifications. There were 82 applicants who were actually admitted, but the model says incorrectly they should not be. So it predicts them as 0 or classifies them as not admitted. Similarly, there were 7 candidates not accepted, but the model says they should be accepted. So that's the misclassification. So calculating misclassification or error is very easy. You add misclassified applicants 82 plus 7, 89, and divide by the total, which is 325. So that will give you misclassification percentage. I can type it here. 82 plus 7 divided by 325. All the observations in the training data. So your misclassification percentage is 27% misclassification, or if you do 1 minus, that is like how accurate you are. So 216 plus 20. 216, 20 divided by 325. So you are accurate about 72.6%. This model is accurate about 73% of the time. That's the accuracy percentage.
Professor, is there a reason why the tree only stopped at those 2 branches? Like you said, why didn't it try to keep making more branches?
When we ran the tree, we ran with the default settings. There are more settings. We can make some changes in the algorithm and say, remember there was output criteria and some other values. So we can actually do some controls on the tree, especially to make it more compact, to do some kind of pruning. Or if you want to grow this tree bigger, we can always relax those conditions. If we do question mark C tree, so it gives you some other things that you can include, and those things can either restrict or relax the conditions. So this is based on default, but usually default settings also work fine, but sometimes we may have to make some changes. It can be adjusted. But right now, the idea was to give you a quick overview of everything so that you're not bogged down by small things. How do you know that your model is good? One way of knowing that your model is good, there's no overfitting. So if the model says that you are right about 73% of the time, with the trained data, but the test data says, no, you are right only 20% of the time. So that means overfitting, and there's a problem. So that means we need to play with this model a bit more and make it more strict so that we don't have too much of overfitting. So let's do error calculation for test data, because the proof of the pudding is in its eating. Trained data, this model has already seen. Usually it will always do well with trained data. The real test will be with unseen data, which is test. So let's call this P1 now. Predict, and we'll use tree model and test data. And then we make a table. Predicted equals P1 and actual. So now test and $ admit. When you run this, you should get this table. First, we'll do misclassification. So 21 plus 1 divided by, I'm looking at test data, it has 75 observations, so I should divide by 75. 29% misclassification compared to 27.3% earlier. So not a huge difference, but still slightly higher, about 2%, which means accuracy will be 2% lower. We can do that also, accuracy 49 plus 4 over 75. It's about 70.6%. So it loses slightly, but it's not very dramatic. We cannot say that these two numbers are too different. Let me share PowerPoint that we used earlier. This tree here. So with training data, I would say we are somewhere here where your misclassification is 27% with training and slightly higher, 29% with unseen or test data. So the gap is not big. We cannot say there is overfitting. But if it was like something like this, where you had 72% versus 20%, that was a big problem. So the good thing is that we got decent result without much headache. We didn't have to work too hard to get a decent outcome. Everyone with me now?
Yep.
Okay, so what I will do is, since we are in R, we'll try one more method, which is called logistic regression. And we have our data ready. We have split it into 80-20, and let's make a model and compare it with decision tree and see where we stand. So I'm going to use this. So we'll go to RStudio, and let me also record somewhere that I can actually type it here. Error we got with test data was 29.3%, and trained data we had 27.4. So this is the number other algorithm should beat. Logistic regression. I'll get you started with this, and we'll continue to discuss this in the next class. Let's use LM, logistic model, something like that. We'll store our model there, just like we stored tree in tree. And the function we use is GLM. You had used a linear model when you did linear regression during your SQL work. GLM is a general linear model, so this is much more versatile. We want admit as a function of all other variables, so put a dot, and the data is train. if you want to be more specific, you can say my data equals train. And other thing that we need to mention is family is equal to binomial, because we have only two outcomes, admit, not admit. So that's binomial situation. So if you run this, so all these models run very quickly. And then if you do summary LM, it will give you all the output. Since you are familiar with regression models, so you'll see a similar format, but there are some differences that we'll talk about. So it has an intercept, so that B0 term, and these stars indicate whether the variable is statistically significant or not. So you can see GRE is not statistically significant because p-value is 0.18. If you do 1 minus, you get only 82% confidence. We never accept anything below 90% in statistics. So 82% confidence level is not good enough. So if a variable is not significant, what do we do? In machine learning, typically we don't care, but in statistical methods, we don't want to develop a model with insignificant variables. So we drop them. So I'm going to rerun this model. After dot, we'll say minus, because I want to drop it, GRE. So we'll drop variable GRE and rerun both model and summary. So you can see GRE is gone. Rank is a factor variable with 4 levels. Whenever there is a factor variable, in a regression model, we don't see all 4 levels. We only see 3 levels. And 4th level you get by multiplying remaining 3 by 0. So if you are writing an equation and if you multiply them by 0, like rank 2, rank 3, rank 4, it automatically means rank 1. And these are the coefficients. Let's take 5-6 minutes and complete the confusion matrix. So for the logistic regression, first we'll do error for train data. We have used P, we have used P1. So now let's have P2. And we'll use function called predict. Our model is LM. Data is train. If you run this and look at P2, so it has some values, like what we'll do is we'll use what we have in the PowerPoint. So we'll specify the type. We want response. And then just run P2 just to see what happens. Okay, so these response values are similar to probabilities. When we use type equals response, we get values which are similar to probabilities. They are more meaningful to us. We want to convert this into sort of like 0 and 1 response. 0 means do not admit and 1 admit. So we'll have to do extra step for that because we are getting probability. So let's use PRED for prediction. And there's a function called if else, something that you see in Excel also, I guess. And we'll say P2. So basically it means if P2 is more than 0.5, if the probability is more than 0.5, then admit, because 1 we are using for admit. Otherwise, reject. So if P is less, reject. If P is more than 0.5, accept. So once you run and double click on PRED and run to see what we have inside. So now we have familiar values like 0 and 1. So we can create a table again. First, we'll put predicted values that we just now predicted, PRED, and actual values are in train $admit. So you get this confusion matrix. To get error, we do 73 plus 15 divided by 325, 27.1%. So that is the training error. So everyone with me so far?
Yes.
Earlier training error was 27.4%. So not very different actually. It is slightly less, not big gain, but slight gain, just 0.3% improvement. And let's check test data. So now we have P2, so P3. Predict using our LM model. Test and type is response. We have used PRED earlier, so PRED1, if else. So P3 greater than 0.5. What we are doing is we are converting probabilities into zeros and ones. So if it is more than 0.5, we say admit that candidate, otherwise reject, 0. And then we can do the table. So we'll call it predicted equals PRED1 and actual equals test $admit. So this one gives us 22, or I will write the full thing, 20 plus 2 divided by 75. So 29.3. Actually exactly same as what we had with decision tree. So for test data, it is exactly same, but train data is slightly lower, but statistically there may not be a big difference. 27.1 and 27.3 is, for all practical reasons, they are same. Okay, so everyone got the same thing, right?
Yes, 29.3%.
Okay. So I'm going to stop here, but any questions?
No, Professor.
Okay, we'll complete this classification model discussion in the next class. Okay, I'll see you next week then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.